Well, I'm sad to say it, but next Sunday when we come to church, these beautiful Christmas decorations are going to be gone. And this beautiful nativity set is going to be put away until next year. Because this week is the final week of the Christmas season. The Christmas season ends this Thursday, January 6th, the 12th and final day of Christmas. And it's the day that we celebrate what's known as the Feast of the Three Kings, or the Feast of the Epiphany. Now, the word Epiphany comes from a Greek word, and it means to reveal. It's when God, the divine, reveals itself to us in new and powerful ways. I am sure that most people in this room, most of you who are watching, have had epiphanies in your life, be they great or small, moments where you felt the presence and power of God right within you and with you in very strong and real ways. Now, as we heard in our words of integration and guidance this morning from our friend Reverend Kay Glennon, she describes the story of that first epiphany as a parable, as a story. And she says that it is a highly symbolic one, which means that it really isn't about the Magi, and it isn't even really about the baby Jesus. The story of the Epiphany is really about us. The Epiphany is our story. It's a reminder for us, especially as we begin a new year, to keep our focus on the light and to allow ourselves to be guided by that light, just as the Magi were. Now, the story of the Epiphany, the story of the Magi, is only told to us in Matthew's Gospel. All we know about the Magi is just that one paragraph that I read for you this morning. So we don't really know a lot about who the Magi was. But notice that the writer of Matthew's Gospel described them as wise men from the East. He never said that there were 3 of them. There could have been more. And he never said that they were kings. I think it's that Christmas carol that we sing, "We Three Kings of Orient Are," that kind of popularized that idea, but it's nowhere to be found in the Bible. What the writer of Matthew's Gospel tells us is that they were wise men, which means that they possessed wisdom. And I've told you before, wisdom is very different from knowledge. Yes, there are a lot of smart people who know a lot of facts. That's knowledge. But the Magi possessed wisdom, and wisdom is a very deep inner knowing, a very deep intuition is what they possessed. And they were Magi. It's where we get our word magic from that same root word. The Magi were magicians, but not magicians the way we understand magicians today. Because magicians today are trying to fool us. They're trying to fool us with sleight of hand and with illusion. But the actual root of that word, if you go back, it was more in line with mystical. Magical meant mystical. The Magi were mystics. They weren't trying to fool us with illusion. They were trying to reveal the truth of our being to us. They were truth tellers. They were seers. Maybe they were clairvoyants or shamans or astronomers. They could see into the stars, see into the spiritual realm. And one of my favorite things about the Magi is it says that they were from the East, which means they were from the Eastern spiritual traditions. They were foreigners. They looked different from Jesus. I remember when I was a kid, I would love putting out the nativity set and putting out the Magi because they looked so different than everyone else in the scene. There was something mystical about them. They spoke a different language. They practiced a different faith tradition. And what's so amazing to me about that is that it shows us that the light of the world came for all people, not just for Christians, for all people. The greatest epiphany that we can have is the discovery of that light with us and within us. When you discover that the light of the world is within you, just as Jesus said it was, and when you begin to see that same light in every single person, that's the greatest epiphany that you can have. Once more and more of us begin to discover that light within ourselves and within one another, we will heal the world. We will begin to transform. And that is why the Magi brought those 3 gifts, because that's what they represent: transformation and healing. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So if you were with us last Sunday, I was talking about alchemy. And I was talking about how alchemists take base metals, and through the power of fire, they transform them into very precious metals like gold. So the Magi bring gold, a precious metal, a symbol of transformation. Then they bring frankincense. Frankincense is an incense. It's an incense that our Eastern brothers and sisters use in their meditation and prayer practice. And what it does is it opens up their senses to the spiritual realm. Represents intuition. And the third gift is myrrh. Myrrh comes from nature. It's a tree resin that is made into a balm for healing. So those gifts represent transformation into intuition and healing. And again, when we put our focus on the light and allow ourselves to be guided by the light, the power and presence of God, we will experience transformation and healing in our lives. Now, there's one person from the story that I haven't talked about yet, and that's King Herod. King Herod was someone who was all about power and wealth. He wanted control. He was so fearful of the light because that threatened his power and control. Herod represents our ego. It's the part of ourselves that is threatened by the light. Notice the Magi, once they discover the Christ light, they don't go back to Herod. It says that they took another road home. That's why the front cover of your bulletin today from the UCC says another road. Because, my friends, when we stop listening to the commands and the voice of our ego, the worldly self, the self that wants to control things, and when we begin to listen more fully to the voice of the Spirit and let that guide us, we're following another road. We're not following the way of the world. We're following the way of the Lord, the way of the Christ. So, my friends, on this Epiphany Sunday, let us not just remember and celebrate the Magi. Let us recommit ourselves to being the Magi, to becoming the Magi, to be people whose focus is on the light, and people who allow ourselves to be guided by that light so that we can heal and transform not just ourselves, but the world. And may we, during this Epiphany Sunday, keep watch for all of the epiphanies, be they great or small, that God has in store for us in 2022. Remembering what Scripture says, that God's plans for us are not plans of harm, but plans of fullness, to give us a future and a hope. Happy New Year, and namaste.